Let's talk about something we've all experienced: being left out. It doesn't matter how confident, capable, or connected you are, we all know this feeling. And sometimes it hits in the most ordinary moments. You walk into a meeting at work and everyone's already deep in conversation. Inside jokes flying, and you're just standing there smiling politely, unsure whether to chime in or quietly fade into the background. Or you're at dinner with friends and the conversation turns to a trip or a group chat that you were never a part of. You nod along and laugh, but you're silently wondering, how did I miss that memo? Or you show up at a new small group trying to engage, but the discussion quickly turns into familiar banter between people who've clearly known each other for years. Or maybe it's at church, standing in the lobby with your coffee, watching groups of people hug, laugh, and connect while you scroll on your phone, trying to look busy instead of being alone. It's awkward, it's isolating, and it leaves you with the subtle but painful gut check, like maybe you don't really belong. Like you're on the outside, unsure where to stand, what to say, or whether anyone would notice if you quietly slipped out. You know what makes it even harder? Most of the time, no one's trying to exclude you. They're just doing what they always do, talking to the people they know, picking up where they left off, sharing stories from a past that you weren't a part of. It's one thing to feel out of place. It's another to feel forgotten, unseen. Because when you're the new one or the outsider, it can feel like there's no space for you. But if you've ever felt that, then you know how powerful it is when somebody turns and smiles and says, "Hey, come sit with us." Or when someone strikes up a conversation and looks you in the eye. In that moment, you feel seen, you feel valued, and you realize, I'm not forgotten. Let's be honest, most of us know how to be friendly. We've learned how to smile, make small talk, and offer a polite greeting. Whether it's a team meeting, a neighborhood gathering, a dinner party, or a weekly group we've been a part of for years, those first interactions tend to go just fine. People are generally courteous, and for a moment, it can feel like connection. But first impressions aren't the same as belonging, and kindness isn't always the same as inclusion. The real test of community shows up later. When somebody lingers at the edge of a conversation and no one pauses to invite them in. When a newcomer sits down and the conversation never shifts to make space for their voice. When we stay comfortable with what we know, who we know, and how we've always done things, without realizing there's someone just a few feet away quietly wondering if they're welcome. Some of us have felt that tension firsthand. We've walked into a room full of people and left feeling more alone than when we arrived. And some of us, whether we realize it or not, have contributed to that feeling for someone else, not on purpose, not out of malice, but because we didn't notice. We stuck with that familiar feeling. We assumed someone else would say hello, or maybe we were just tired, distracted, or unsure of what to say ourselves. But even when it's unintentional, the result is the same. Someone walks away feeling invisible, and that should matter to us. Not just because it's awkward, but because it's the opposite of the life that we've been called to live. As people who follow Jesus, we're not just invited to believe a set of ideas. We're invited to embody a way of being in the world, a way that reflects patience, compassion, and presence. We can't control how everyone feels, but we are responsible for the culture we create at work, at the dinner table, in our neighborhoods, and yes, in our churches too. Because how we treat people in those spaces that we already occupy says a lot more than what we post or what we claim to believe. And if we're not intentional, we can become the kind of people who mean well, but actually miss people in the process. Today, we're looking at the book of Colossians in the New Testament, which is a letter written by the Apostle Paul to a community of new believers who were trying to figure out what it looked like to live as Jesus-following community in a world that looked very different. Paul didn't just tell them what to believe, he told them what kind of people to be. And he wrote this: "Therefore, as God's chosen people, holy and dearly loved, clothe yourselves with compassion, kindness, humility, gentleness, and patience. Bear with each other and forgive one another if any of you has a grievance against someone. Forgive as the Lord forgave you. And over all these virtues, put on love, which binds them all together in perfect unity." This isn't just a feel-good list. These are the ingredients of a community that actually reflects Jesus. So let's break it down. Compassion. Are you tuned in to how someone else might feel? Kindness. Are you just not mean, or are you actively making someone feel welcome? Humility. Are you willing to make space for someone new, even if it's uncomfortable? Gentleness and patience. Are you okay letting someone warm up slowly, or do you expect them to already know how things work? Well, then Paul wrote this: "Let the peace of Christ rule in your hearts, since as members of one body, you were called to peace." That's not just a truth Paul wrote about a person. It's a truth that meant to be applied to a huge group. Paul is talking about one body, a shared identity, a community shaped by peace. It's about us being different, living in a way that reflects Jesus together. And that kind of peace, it stands out. It invites curiosity. It creates safety because people are watching to see if there's a place where they won't be judged or pushed out or forgotten. They're watching to see if something real exists. And Jesus made it crystal clear what that something real looks like. By this, everyone will know that you are my disciples if you love one another. You want to be a witness? That's it. Love lived out together. Because how you treat people says everything. It's your loudest message. It's your most honest testimony. And for some people, it's their very first look at Jesus. And let's flip it for a second, because isn't that what you want too? Don't you want to be surrounded by people who are patient with you when you mess up? People who don't cancel you, judge you, or roll their eyes the second that you could get something wrong, but they choose kindness anyway? That's what love does. It sees people. It stays when things are messy. It offers grace when it's not earned. And that kind of love, it changes everything. If you're new here, this is actually a great time for you to be here because you're getting to hear what we want to be about. And if you haven't experienced this kind of love yet, just know we're not perfect, but we're working on it. That's why Paul wrote this in 1 Corinthians 13. If I speak in the tongues of men or of angels, but do not have love, I am only a resounding gong or a clanging cymbal. In other words, you can have all the right theology, you can say all the right stuff, but if love isn't behind it, it's just noise. You can be impressive for a second, but without love, it doesn't mean anything, and it certainly doesn't last. And the first two things Paul wrote that love is patient, love is kind. So what if we started there? What if people around you started saying, I don't know what it is about her, but she never gives up on people? Or, he's the only one who actually listens to me without judging. What if people felt Jesus before they ever heard about him? You know what that does? It opens a door. It earns you the chance to share your story. Remember last week how your story is the invitation? This is what creates the space for that invitation to matter. That's what it means to be a witness. That's the real message. That's evangelism. It's not just about what you say. It's about how you live. You're a messenger of good news, not just with your words, but with your life. Every act of patience, every moment of kindness, every time you stay when it'd be easier to walk away. That's the good news on display. And you never know what could happen. You might get to stand in the front row one day, watching your friend get baptized, thinking, I remember when they didn't even believe in God. You might see someone's future look totally different because you were willing to love them exactly where they are. Patient, kind, present. That's how you live like a witness, because how you treat people says everything. And let's circle back to week 1 in this series. You don't have to do this alone. You were never meant to. You don't have to witness alone. Jesus is with you. You're not responsible for changing someone's heart. Jesus is. Now, it's one thing to say that we believe in love, grace, and patience, but it's another to examine how those values actually show up in our daily lives. Not just in church, not just in groups, but in the way that we interact with people everywhere we go. So let's slow down long enough to ask ourselves some honest questions. First, would the people I spend time with, whether it's at work or at the gym or in my neighborhood, describe me as someone who's open, kind, and safe to be around? Second, when I walk into a room, do I look for who's already in my circle or for someone who might be quietly waiting to be seen? Third, am I more focused on staying comfortable or being available to others? Do I take time to include, to follow up, to make space for someone else's story? Or do I move quickly through life, head down, schedule full? Fourth, is there someone in my life, past or present, who I've unintentionally left out, overlooked, or forgotten. Someone I could reach out to this week. Finally, have I ever ignored a nudge to speak up or show kindness because it felt inconvenient or because I didn't think it would matter? The truth is, there are people who haven't walked away from faith. They've walked away from people who claim to represent it. And that should matter. It should give us pause, and it should shape the way that we move forward. If that's part of your story, if you've ever felt overlooked, judged, or forgotten, I'm so sorry. Please hear this clearly. We want to be a community that's growing, that's listening, that's learning how to reflect the love of Jesus with more clarity, not just in our words, but in the way that we live. Because evangelism isn't just about inviting someone to church. It's about how we show up in the world, how we listen, how we notice, how we include. It's the everyday decisions that shape how others experience Jesus through us. This is what it means to be a witness, not just in what we believe, but in how we're showing patience and kindness to others. How we treat people says everything. Over the past few weeks, we've reframed evangelism, not as pressure to say the perfect thing, but as an invitation to live with purpose and presence, to carry the good news not just in our words, but in the way that we treat people, because that's what a witness does. That's what a messenger of good news looks like. When you listen before you speak, when you stay when things get messy, when you lead with kindness and patience, that's evangelism. That's love in motion. This is why we live differently. This is why we show up. This is why we tell our story, because how we live is what gives our message meaning. And through our lives, our actual, ordinary, everyday lives, God is telling a bigger story, one of grace, one of hope, and one of good news.